have my own coming out moment here. I'm a Republican in the British sense, which means that I strongly believe that the monarchy should be abolished. Okay, so I didn't watch any of this this summer, and I've had to do a lot of homework in trying to put together this part of the lecture. But I'm blessed by the fact that my mother, my sisters, and my wife are all are very much enamored of the royal family and could fill in some gaps. So here we go, and I've deliberately put the mirror image of Charles and Diana in the famous 1902. You think that this carriage that they're being driven around in is ancient, don't you? It's a complete fiction. It was built in 1902 as part of one of the first big 1902. What happened? Oh yeah, it was the coronation of the one who followed Queen Victoria, whose name is escaping me. Any help? Was it George? Edward? Oh dear, you see, now I'm in trouble. Anyway, let's move swiftly on. Yeah, so mirror image of the Charles and Diana shot I showed you, and a similar moment in which the royal family appears to be in the process of getting a new sort of brand image, of being reinvented and projected in a new way. And Kate Middleton is really an important element of that, because she's a commoner, which means to say that she's like you or I. She doesn't come from ancient aristocratic titled stock. So this is a story of a royal wedding where it's not an arrangement between titled families, between the monarchy and some lesser aristocrat. This is a story about true love, how anyone can marry a member of the royal family. And the primary piece of evidence to suggest that Kate Middleton is a commoner is routinely trotted out in the news coverage that I have been devouring with so much interest, is that her mother used to be an air steward. Okay, so this is how apparently that's an incredibly humble position to occupy, and it shows how humble she is. So this is the ultimate royal romance. Yeah, that you don't have to be an aristocrat. Anyone, this could happen to you in a way that it just wasn't the case with Diana. Finally, the middle classes feel like they've been credentialed by the royal family. And yet, even though this seems to be about opening up the royal family to a new set of class relations, the wedding was full of the remnants of royal families from across the world, many of whom, ironically, had actually been invented by the British during the period of colonial rule. And you'll see as we get on that, when Britain wanted to rule a country but didn't actually, want to get directly involved, they would have an indirect form of rule where they would install some person as a monarch in order to govern over them. And many of those people were invited to the wedding over, of course, heads of government. So this was in part about a new type of monarchy, and in part about the old monarchy that only invites these old, people that are similarly ennobled and titled as themselves. But it's also about this new age of celebrity that Diana helped to create. And this is the sort of 4 weddings and a funeral moment, I think, of the lecture. The broadcasts are full of Brits with posh accents, running around in ancient buildings, in horses and carriages, wearing silly uniforms. This is the projection of Britain as the ultimate sort of tourist land, with Elgar and Jerusalem playing, and they drive off in Prince Charles's Aston Martin. It's like James Bond is on the back seat, and it's all this quintessential sort of projection of Britain. Like Diana, like Diana, the wedding is full of celebrity. Diana's funeral, which, you know, there was the Spielberg, Elton John, of course, playing the music, Tom Cruise. All of those people were at Diana's funeral. Like Diana's funeral, the wedding had its real celebrity guests, and pride of place was there afforded to David Beckham and, I always forget her name, Victoria Beckham, thank you. She's Posh Spice, is that right? And Victoria Beckham, all 6 inches of her in width. Elton John, of course, came because he's now such a dear old family friend. You have all of the endless discussion in the celebrity magazines, People's magazines, you know, Spot the Stars type of things. Every time you go to get your hair cut now, or you go to the dentist, you pick one of these and it's full of pictures of the wedding. All the usual gossip about, you know, who's going with who, what dresses someone's wearing. And a new starring role for Kate's sister, Philippa, that then took up major column inches. Now, the point that I'm making here is that there's something very interesting that's happened. The royal family no longer governs, no longer owes its position to its old forms of legitimation. So originally, the monarchy was a type of divine power, yeah? Given their power, you know, through by none other than, you know, the big guy upstairs, or the, you know, whoever God is. Okay. Then in Britain, the monarchy rules as part of a new constitutional system in 1688. Okay, where they, after the revolution in 1688, they're installed as a constitutional monarchy that is the head of the state. Okay, so then you have like a man-made and constitutional set of powers. Okay, when the empire is at its height in the 1870s, the royal family and Queen Victoria is made Empress of India. Okay, so there's a new sort of political, largely symbolic role given to the royal family. Now I'm suggesting the royal family owe their visibility and their legitimation to their ability to fill up column inches in the gossip magazines and in the news broadcasts. In other words, this is a monarchy for the age of celebrity. And the monarchy only exists insofar as it can pull off this type of show. Remember also that this wedding happens in an age of austerity far greater than 1981. The wedding is estimated to have cost $70 million. Chelsea Clinton's wedding apparently cost a mere $5 million. See, I've really been enjoying reading these magazines. And there was $30 million spent on the security for the wedding alone. Okay? This comes a year after the government had introduced the biggest deflationary budget, the largest scale of cuts in public expenditure basically ever known. £83 billion worth, so that's what, about $120 billion worth of cuts to be spread over 4 years. Okay, so there's a remarkable, you know, investment here in the importance of the monarchy at a moment when the importance of market efficiencies is being driven home everywhere else in the country. Only one slide for them. I did do my homework, but not that much homework. So, any questions on this part of the show? No? Okay, moving on. I'm going to start forcing questions out of you maybe even at the end of this one. So let's move now penultimately to the riots of last month. No, of this month. Yes, my lord. Of this month. Just. The riots begin basically on the 6th of August, following the murder of this man called Mark Duggan 2 days previously, where he shot and he had a weapon on him, but they have now discovered in the inquest that he hadn't fired his gun, and he was shot. Bear in mind that in Britain, the police have only very recently been given guns, and only very special units within the police force. Britain remains committed to a type of policing that allegedly doesn't meet force with force, or only has these mobile squads that have to be called out and authorized. So there's a big protest in the days following, and it catalyzes the riot that begins in Tottenham. The march goes from Broadwater Farm Estate, which is a horrific estate in North London, and they march down to the police station, and the riot begins, basically spreads out from there. And then very quickly, on the 7th of August, it spreads round, as in 1981, to a bunch of other neighbourhoods or suburbs in London, to Brixton, to Enfield, to Islington, to Wood Green. There's Oxford Circus, not really a neighbourhood but a place, and then to Bromley, Camden, Clapham, Croydon, Ely, East Ham, Hackney, Lewisham, Peckham, a lot of London, as you're going to see in the next slide. And then beyond London, so in Birmingham again, in Bristol, in Gillingham and Nottingham, they're in the Midlands, in Leicester again in the Midlands, West Bromwich and Wolverhampton in the Birmingham conurbation, Bury, Liverpool in the northwest, Manchester, Rochdale, Salford right next to Manchester, Sefton and Wirral, both part of the Liverpool conurbation. Interestingly, one contrast between 1981 is that there is nothing happening in either Wales or in Scotland. This is a very English riot. And remember, now Wales and Scotland are basically governed by their own, in the Scottish case, a parliament, and in the Welsh case by an assembly with often substantively different policies. Now the rioting is quickly characterized by a sort of pattern of looting, of arson, and of defence leagues mobilised in order to protect shops and communities. So how do we explain these riots? I'm asking the same question as I did of the 81. And the answers may well look pretty similar in some respects. There's a continued history of racist policing in London. There's a number of high-profile deaths of black Britons at the hands of the police. Cynthia Jarrett, famously on Tottenham's Broadwater Farm, died after police raided her house in 1985. Stephen Lawrence, stabbed to death by a bunch of white youths, and the police failed to prosecute the perpetrators, and there ended up being a trial by the family. And the official report into that, the Macpherson report, found the Metropolitan Police Force in London to be guilty of institutional racism. So an official report actually comes out for the first time and says that the Metropolitan Police Force is institutional.